The thunder of hooves pounded the dusty plains as the stagecoach careened across the vast Wyoming territory, a lone pregnant woman clutching the leather seat with white knuckles as tears streamed down her face. Annabelle Crawford had never imagined that at 22 years of age, she would find herself abandoned, with nothing but a small carpetbag of belongings and the child growing inside her. It was the summer of 1878, and the small mining town of Silverton appeared on the horizon like a mirage. Weathered buildings lined a single main street, their facades bleached by the relentless sun. The stagecoach rattled to a stop, sending a cloud of dust billowing around the tired horses. "End of the line, madam," the driver called down, his voice gruff but not unkind. He climbed down from his perch and opened the door, offering his hand to help her descend. Annabelle hesitated, one hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. 6 months along now, there was no hiding her condition. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders despite the summer heat, as if it could somehow shield her from the judging eyes of strangers. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting his assistance and stepping carefully onto the packed dirt of the main street. Her legs wobbled from the long journey, and she steadied herself against the side of the coach. "You got somebody meeting you?" the driver asked, retrieving her small bag from the luggage rack. Annabelle shook her head. "No, sir. I'm hoping to find work." The driver's weathered face creased with concern as he handed her the bag. "Not many places in town keen to hire women in your—" He glanced at her middle situation, madam. "I'm a hard worker," she said with quiet determination. "I'll find something." He nodded, though his expression remained doubtful. "Hotel's just down the way. Mrs. Pratt, who runs it, can be a bit stern, but she's fair." With that small piece of advice, he tipped his hat and climbed back onto the coach, leaving Annabelle alone in the unfamiliar street. She squared her shoulders and began walking, ignoring the curious stares from passers-by. The weight of her condition made each step laborious in the summer heat, but she pressed on, clinging to the last shreds of her dignity. Mrs. Pratt, as it turned out, was indeed stern. The proprietress of the Silverton Hotel regarded Annabelle with thinly veiled disapproval, her eyes lingering on the obvious swell beneath Annabelle's dress. "We don't typically cater to unmarried women in your condition," Mrs. Pratt said, her voice crisp. "Please," Annabelle said, hating the desperation in her voice. "I can pay for 2 nights. By then I'll have found work." Mrs. Pratt's eyebrows rose. "Work? In your state? Who would hire you?" "I'm an excellent seamstress," Annabelle countered, "and I can cook, clean, do laundry. I'm not afraid of hard work." After a moment's consideration, Mrs. Pratt relented. 2 nights. Room at the end of the hall upstairs. "Thank you," Annabelle breathed, counting out the precious coins from her dwindling savings. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the dusty street below. Annabelle sank onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing her shoulders to slump. She had come so far fleeing her hometown in Missouri after Thomas had abandoned her upon learning of the pregnancy. His parting words still stung. "That's your problem now, not mine." Her parents, pillars of their small community, had made it clear she could not remain in their home, bringing shame upon the family. With few options and fewer friends willing to help, she had gathered what money she could and headed west, chasing vague stories of frontier towns where the past mattered less than one's willingness to work. Now, alone in a strange town with her money nearly gone, the reality of her situation crashed over her. She allowed herself a few minutes of quiet tears before washing her face and straightening her dress. She couldn't afford self-pity. The baby would come whether she was ready or not. The next morning, Annabelle set out early, determined to find employment. The dressmaker turned her away with barely concealed disdain. The general store owner seemed sympathetic but shook his head. Wouldn't be proper, he said apologetically. What would my customers think? By midday, she had been rejected by every respectable business in town. Hungry and disheartened, she paused outside the Silver Dollar Saloon, eyeing the help wanted sign in the window. Working in a saloon wasn't what she had envisioned, but desperation was setting in. The interior was dim after the bright sunshine outside. A few men sat at tables despite the early hour, glasses of amber liquid before them. Behind the bar, a man with a handlebar mustache looked up as she entered. "We're looking for girls to serve drinks and keep the customers happy," he said bluntly, his gaze sweeping over her. "But not in your condition. Bad for business." Annabelle felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. "I can work in the kitchen," she offered. "Or clean. You won't even have to see me." The bartender shook his head. "Sorry, miss. Try the ranch outside town." Heard they need a cook. It was her last hope. With the afternoon sun beating down, Annabelle made her way out of town, following the directions given by the bartender. The Rocking X Ranch lay 3 miles outside Silverton, a distance that seemed insurmountable in her condition and the sweltering heat. She was nearly halfway there when the cramping began. Sharp pains that made her double over on the dusty road. Too early. It was too early for the baby. Panic surged through her as she realized she was alone on the open road. No help in sight. The sound of an approaching horse barely registered through her fear. She looked up to see a rider approaching at a steady trot, the silhouette of a man in a wide-brimmed hat against the sun. "Help!" she called weakly, one hand pressed against her belly, the other stretched out in a plea. The rider pulled his horse to a stop beside her, dismounting in one fluid motion. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face tanned by the sun and eyes the color of a summer storm. "Madam, you all right?" His voice was deep, tinged with concern. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's wrong." Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms and lifted her onto his horse, climbing up behind her. One strong arm held her securely against his chest as he turned the horse around. "I've got you," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "The ranch is closer than town. My sister's there. She's helped birth more calves and babies than anyone in the county." The pain subsided somewhat as they rode, but Annabelle remained terrified. She had nothing, no doctor, no midwife, no family, just the kindness of a stranger. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his horse at a steady pace to avoid jostling her. "Annabelle Crawford," she managed. "Xavier Blackwood," he replied. "Most folks call me Xander. This is my ranch we're heading to. The Rocking X. Of course, the X stood for Xavier. Annabelle would have laughed at the irony of ending up exactly where she'd been heading, if she hadn't been so frightened. The ranch house came into view, a solid 2-story structure surrounded by outbuildings and corrals. A woman emerged onto the porch as they approached, her expression changing from welcome to alarm as she took in the scene. "Adelaide," Xander called. "This lady needs help. Something's wrong with the baby." Adelaide Blackwood, a younger version of her brother with the same stormy eyes, rushed forward as Xander dismounted and carefully lifted Annabelle down. "How far along are you?" Adelaide asked, leading the way into the house. 6 months, Annabelle replied, wincing as another cramp seized her. Adelaide's expression grew grave. "Let's get you lying down." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. Adelaide examined her with gentle, capable hands and announced that it was false labor, brought on by exhaustion and dehydration. The baby wasn't coming yet, but Annabelle needed rest and care. "You're staying right here until you're stronger," Adelaide declared, her tone brooking no argument. "I've fixed up the spare room for you." Too weak to protest, Annabelle could only nod gratefully. As darkness fell, She drifted into an exhausted sleep in a clean, comfortable bed, the first real rest she'd had in weeks. She awoke to sunlight streaming through curtained windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she couldn't place where she was. Then memory flooded back, the pain, the fear, the kind stranger who had rescued her. Adelaide entered carrying a tray with a steaming mug and a plate of food. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Better," Annabelle admitted, struggling to sit up. "Thank you for your kindness. I don't know how to repay you." Adelaide waved away her thanks. "You needed help. That's all there is to it." She set the tray on Annabelle's lap. "Eat. You need to keep up your strength." As Annabelle ate the hearty breakfast, Adelaide sat in a chair by the bed. "Xander told me he found you on the road to the ranch. Were you coming here?" Annabelle nodded. "I heard you needed a cook." Adelaide's eyes widened. "You were looking for work? In your condition?" "I don't have much choice," Annabelle said quietly. "I have no husband, no family willing to help." Instead of the judgment Annabelle expected, Adelaide's expression softened with understanding. "Well, we do need a cook. Our last one left to get married 2 months ago, and neither Xander nor I have much talent in the kitchen. The Cowboys complain constantly about the food." Hope fluttered in Annabelle's chest. "I'm an excellent cook, and I can clean, so whatever you need." "We'll discuss it with Xander," Adelaide promised. "But first, you need to rest." Annabelle spent the day in bed, following Adelaide's orders. By evening, she felt strong enough to join the Blackwood siblings for supper in the dining room downstairs. Xander rose when she entered, pulling out a chair for her. "Miss Crawford, good to see you on your feet." "Please call me Annabelle," she said, taking the offered seat. "And thank you again for your help yesterday." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Adelaide tells me you're looking for work as a cook." "Yes," Annabelle confirmed. "I heard you had a position available." Xander studied her for a long moment. "We do, but it's hard work, feeding a dozen hungry ranch hands 3 times a day. And in your condition." "I'm stronger than I look," Annabelle insisted. "And I need the work." "The father of your child," Xander said carefully. "He's not in the picture?" Annabelle's cheeks burned with shame. "No, he wanted no part of it." A muscle twitched in Xander's jaw. "What kind of man abandons his own child?" "Xander," Adelaide warned, "that's not our business." He exhaled slowly. "You're right." He turned back to Annabelle. "The job is yours if you want it. Room and board plus wages. But you'll take it easy until the baby comes. Adelaide will help with the heavy work." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." "Xander," he corrected. "If you're going to be living here, we might as well use first names." And so Annabelle found herself installed as the cook at the Rocking X Ranch, a position that came with a small but comfortable room off the kitchen, regular meals, and the unexpected blessing of Adelaide's friendship. The ranch hands, initially wary of the pregnant newcomer, were won over by her cooking. Biscuits light as air, stews rich with flavor, and pies that reminded them of home earned her their respect and protection. No one asked about her past or the father of her child, accepting her presence as simply the way things were. Xander remained something of a mystery to her. He was unfailingly polite, ensuring she had everything she needed, but maintained a certain distance. She often caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression thoughtful and a little sad. One evening, as Annabelle sat on the porch enjoying the cool air after a hot day in the kitchen, Xander joined her, settling into the chair beside hers. "The men can't stop talking about your apple pie," he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Johnson claims it's better than his mother's, which is high praise indeed." Annabelle smiled. "I'm glad they enjoyed it." "You've been here almost a month now," Xander observed. "Settling in all right?" Yes, she said honestly. Everyone has been kind. It's more than I dared hope for. He nodded, his gaze on the distant mountains turning purple in the fading light. Adelaide told me you left Missouri. That's a long way to travel alone. Annabelle tensed. I had no choice. My family. She trailed off, unsure how much to reveal. They turned you out? There was no judgment in his voice, only a quiet anger on her behalf. They're respected in the community, she explained. A daughter with child and no husband, it was too much scandal for them to bear. Xander's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. And the man responsible? Thomas Harrington, she said, the name bitter on her tongue. We were to be married. When I told him about the baby, he said it wasn't his concern and left town the next day. Coward, Xander muttered. Yes, Annabelle agreed softly. But perhaps it's better this way. Better to know now what kind of man he truly is. They sat in silence as dusk deepened into night, stars appearing one by one in the vast Wyoming sky. My wife died, Xander said suddenly. 3 years ago. Childbirth. We lost the baby too. Annabelle's heart constricted with sympathy. I'm so sorry. He nodded, accepting her condolences. Sarah was everything to me. After she died, I couldn't imagine ever feeling anything again. Just went through the motions of living. Adelaide's the one who kept the ranch going those first months. Annabelle remained silent, sensing he needed to talk. Watching you, seeing your courage, it reminds me there's still good in this world. Still reasons to get up in the morning. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. I admire your strength, Annabelle. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. Most people just see shame when they look at me. Most people are fools, he said firmly. I see a woman brave enough to face the world alone rather than stay where she wasn't valued. Something shifted between them that night, a connection formed in shared confidences under the vast Wyoming sky. As summer gave way to autumn, Annabelle's condition became more pronounced. Her movements slowed, and despite her protests, Adelaide and Xander insisted she rest more and work less. One of the younger ranch hands, a boy of barely 17 named Billy, was enlisted to help with the heavier kitchen tasks. I don't need coddling, Annabelle protested one morning when she found Billy already stoking the stove. Boss's orders, madam, Billy said with a grin. Mr. Blackwood says you're to take it easy or he'll have words with you. Annabelle huffed but secretly appreciated the care. No one had ever looked after her this way before. The ranch settled into a rhythm as they prepared for winter. Cattle were moved to lower pastures, supplies were stocked, and repairs made to buildings before the first snows came. Annabelle found herself watching Xander more and more, the easy way he sat a horse, the respect his men showed him, the gentleness with which he treated his sister and, increasingly, herself. She tried to tell herself it was merely gratitude she felt, but in quiet moments, she acknowledged the truth. She was falling in love with Xavier Blackwood, a man still mourning his wife, a man who had taken her in out of kindness but surely couldn't see her as anything more than a responsibility. October brought the first dusting of snow and with it, unexpected visitors. Annabelle was rolling out dough for the evening's biscuits when the sound of approaching horses drew her to the window. 3 riders were coming up the drive, well-dressed men who sat their horses with the stiff posture of those unaccustomed to long rides. Xander met them in the yard, his stance wary. Through the partially open window, Annabelle could hear fragments of conversation. Looking for my daughter. Disgraced the family name. Take her back where she belongs. Her blood ran cold. Her father had found her. She backed away from the window, one hand pressed to her mouth to stifle a cry. Adelaide found her there, trembling. Annabelle? What's wrong? My father, she whispered. He's here with my brothers. Adelaide's expression hardened. Stay here. She disappeared, presumably to join her brother outside. Annabelle sank into a chair, heart pounding. How had they found her? What would Xander do? Would he send her away with them? The sound of raised voices drifted through the window. She could hear Xander now, his tone sharp with anger. Not cattle to be rounded up. Her decision to make. Respect on my property. The front door opened and closed. Heavy footsteps approached the kitchen. Annabelle rose, hands clutching her apron, as Xander entered with Adelaide close behind. His face was thunderous. Your father would like to speak with you, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I told him it's your choice whether to see him or not. Annabelle took a deep breath. What does he want? To take you home, Adelaide answered, her tone making it clear what she thought of that idea. Why? Annabelle asked bitterly. They made it very clear I was no longer welcome. Xander's expression softened. You don't have to see them. I can send them on their way right now. She considered it, tempted to hide behind Xander's protection. But she had run once already. Perhaps it was time to face her past. I'll speak to them, she decided, but not alone. I'll be right beside you, Xander promised. They moved to the parlor, where her father and brothers waited. Frederick Crawford stood as she entered, his stern face unchanged since she had last seen him 4 months earlier. Her brothers, William and James, looked uncomfortable, avoiding her gaze. Annabelle, her father said, his voice as cold as she remembered. You've led us on quite a chase. I didn't ask to be followed, she replied, surprised at the steadiness of her voice. You're coming home, he stated, as if it were already decided. This shameful episode has gone on long enough. Xander moved closer to Annabelle, his presence reassuring. Mr. Crawford, your daughter is a valued member of this household. She stays or goes as she chooses. Frederick's gaze flickered to Xander, dismissive. This is a family matter, sir. You made it clear I was no longer family when you told me to leave, Annabelle reminded him. Why the change of heart? Her father's expression tightened. Thomas Harrington has returned to town. He's willing to marry you to give the child a name. Shock rendered Annabelle momentarily speechless. Thomas abandoned me, she finally managed. Why would he want to marry me now? His business ventures failed, William spoke up, earning a sharp look from their father. He's come back to work for his father and needs to settle down. So he needs my father's connections, Annabelle translated, a bitter laugh escaping her. And you're willing to forgive my shame, if it means aligning with the Harrington business. You're being ridiculous, her father snapped. We're offering you respectability, a name for your child. What more could you want? Respect, Annabelle said quietly. Love. Things I've found here that were never given to me at home. Frederick's face reddened. You would choose to live as a servant rather than return as the wife of a businessman? Have you lost your senses completely? She's not a servant, Xander interjected, his voice dangerously calm. She's family. The words hung in the air, stunning everyone into silence. Family? Frederick echoed incredulously. What exactly are you implying, Mr. Blackwood? Xander's gaze never wavered. I'm implying, Mr. Crawford, that your daughter deserves better than a man who abandoned her and only wants her now because it's convenient. She deserves someone who sees her worth, who values her strength and courage, someone who would be proud to call her child his own. Annabelle stared at him, hardly daring to breathe. That baby already has a father, Xander continued, turning to look at her with an expression that made her heart stop. If Annabelle will have me. The room fell completely silent. Her father's face registered shock, then calculation. "You're proposing marriage?" Frederick asked, unable to hide his surprise. "I'm asking Annabelle if she'll consider it," Xander corrected, his eyes never leaving hers. "The decision is hers." Her mind reeled. Was this simply Xander's way of protecting her from her family's machinations? Or did he truly mean it? The look in his eyes suggested the latter, but she couldn't be sure. "I think," Adelaide said firmly, breaking the tense silence, "that Annabelle needs time to consider this unexpected turn of events. Perhaps you gentlemen could return to town and await her decision." Frederick looked as if he wanted to object, but something in Xander's stance convinced him otherwise. "Very well. We'll be at the hotel in Silverton. I expect an answer by tomorrow." After they departed, Annabelle remained in the parlor with Xander and Adelaide. The silence stretched between them until Adelaide tactfully excused herself, leaving them alone. "Did you mean it?" Annabelle asked when she found her voice. "Or was that just to get rid of them?" Xander moved closer, taking her hands in his. "I meant every word," he said softly. "I know it's sudden, and I don't expect an immediate answer, but I've been thinking about it for weeks now." "Weeks?" she echoed, disbelieving. He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "I think I started falling for you that first day, when you were so determined to work despite everything. Your courage, your kindness. The way you've brought life back to this house, how could I not love you?" "Love?" she whispered, scarcely able to believe what she was hearing. "Yes, Annabelle. I love you." His hands tightened around hers. "I never thought I'd feel this way again after Sarah died. Never thought I'd want to. But you changed that." Tears filled her eyes. "I love you too," she admitted. "But the baby will be mine in every way that matters," he finished firmly. "I already love this child, Annabelle, because it's part of you." She searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity. "You truly mean that?" "With all my heart." He hesitated, then asked, "Does that mean you'll consider my proposal?" "I don't need to consider it," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, Xavier Blackwood. I will marry you." His answering smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He drew her gently into his arms, mindful of her condition, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "We should tell Adelaide," Annabelle said when they finally drew apart. Xander laughed. "I suspect she already knows. She's been dropping hints for weeks that I should speak up before someone else came along and stole you away." The next day, Frederick Crawford and his sons returned to the ranch, expecting to escort Annabelle back to Missouri. Instead, they found her sitting calmly in the parlor beside Xander, their hands intertwined. "I'm staying," she told her father without preamble. "Xander and I are getting married." Frederick's expression darkened. "This is absurd. You barely know this man." "I know he stood by me when my own family cast me out," Annabelle replied evenly. "I know he sees me as a person of value, not a problem to be solved or a shame to be hidden." "You're making a mistake," her father insisted. "What about the child? It needs its real father." "A real father is someone who loves and protects his child," Xander interjected, "not someone who runs at the first sign of responsibility." Frederick turned to his sons, seeking support, but found none. William looked uncomfortable, James thoughtful. "She seems happy, father," James said quietly. "Perhaps we should respect her choice." Frederick's face flushed with anger. "Fine. Stay here with your rancher, but don't expect anything from us. No dowry, no inheritance." "I don't want anything from you," Annabelle said calmly. "I have everything I need right here." After they left, Annabelle let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Xander wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. She nodded, surprised to find she truly was. Yes, for the first time in a long while, I think I am. They were married 2 weeks later by the circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. The ceremony took place in the ranch house parlor, with Adelaide standing as witness along with the ranch hands who had come to respect and care for Annabelle. It was simple but perfect, filled with love and hope for the future. Winter settled over the Wyoming territory, blanketing the ranch in snow. Inside the ranch house, warmth and contentment reigned. Xander proved to be a tender, patient husband, never pushing for more intimacy than Annabelle was comfortable with in her condition. They shared a bed, but often just to hold each other through the long winter nights, talking about their hopes and dreams for their future together. December brought a blizzard that isolated the ranch for days. In the midst of the storm, Annabelle went into labor a month earlier than expected. Adelaide sent one of the ranch hands to fetch the doctor from town, but it was clear he wouldn't make it through the snow in time. "It's going to be all right," Adelaide assured her as she prepared the bedroom. "I've helped with dozens of births." Xander paced outside the door, frantic with worry. The memory of losing Sarah in childbirth haunted him, but he refused to give in to fear. When Annabelle called for him, he was at her side in an instant, holding her hand as she weathered the contractions. "I'm scared," she admitted between pains. "It's too early." "You're the strongest person I know," he told her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You can do this. We'll do it together." The labor was long and difficult. As night fell and the blizzard howled outside, Annabelle's strength began to flag. Adelaide exchanged worried glances with her brother over Annabelle's head. "You need to push harder," Adelaide urged. "The baby is almost here." "I can't," Annabelle gasped, exhaustion evident in her voice. "I can't do it." Xander knelt beside the bed, bringing his face level with hers. "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "You crossed half the country alone. You faced down your father. You've rebuilt your life from nothing. This is just one more mountain to climb, and I'm right here with you." His words seemed to give her renewed determination. With a cry that tore at his heart, she gave one final, mighty push. And then, cutting through the howl of the blizzard, came the thin, indignant wail of a newborn. "A girl," Adelaide announced, tears in her eyes as she quickly wrapped the tiny infant in warm blankets. "A beautiful little girl." She placed the baby in Annabelle's arms. Despite being early, the child seemed healthy, small but perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that, when they briefly fluttered open, revealed the same stormy gray as her new father's. "She looks like you," Annabelle whispered in wonder, looking up at Xander. He stared down at the tiny bundle, overwhelmed with love for this child, who wasn't his by blood, but was already his in every way that mattered. "She's beautiful," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like her mother." "What will you name her?" Adelaide asked softly. Annabelle looked up at her husband. "Sarah," she said, "after your first wife. So she'll always be remembered." Tears filled Xander's eyes. He bent to kiss first his wife, then the downy head of his new daughter. "Sarah Adelaide Blackwood," he said. "Welcome to the world, little one." Adelaide wiped away her own tears. "I'll leave you three alone for a bit," she said, slipping quietly from the room. Alone with his new family, Xander sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Annabelle, the other hand gently stroking his daughter's cheek. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" Annabelle asked, her tired face glowing with happiness. "For coming into my life, for trusting me with your heart, for this perfect little girl." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "For giving me a family again when I thought that part of my life was over. You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go," she reminded him. "You really saw me when everyone else just saw my shame." "There was never any shame," he said fiercely. only courage. Outside, the blizzard began to subside, the howling wind softening to a gentle whisper. Inside, wrapped in the warmth of newfound love, the little family drifted into peaceful sleep. Spring came early to Wyoming that year, bringing with it renewal and hope. The ranch flourished under Xander's management, the cattle fat and healthy, the crops promising a bountiful harvest. In the ranch house, baby Sarah thrived, growing from the tiny, premature infant into a sturdy, cheerful baby with her father's eyes and her mother's sweet smile. Annabelle blossomed as well, her confidence growing as she settled into her roles as wife, mother, and mistress of the Rocking X. She still cooked for the ranch hands occasionally. Her famous apple pie remained in high demand, but she had hired a full-time cook to take over the daily duties, allowing her to focus on her family and the management of the household. On a warm May evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah asleep in her mother's arms, Xander turned to his wife with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he began. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, leaning against his shoulder. He smiled, dropping a kiss on top of her head. "What would you think about expanding the family?" Annabelle looked up at him in surprise. "Another baby? Already?" "Not exactly," he said. "I received a letter yesterday from the orphanage in Cheyenne. They have a boy, 8 years old, whose parents died on the trail west. No relatives willing to take him in." Her expression softened. "You want to adopt him?" Xander nodded. "They say he's a good kid. Smart, hardworking. But he's getting to an age where people are less likely to want him. Most folks want babies or very young children." "What's his name?" Annabelle asked, already warming to the idea. "James," Xander replied. "James Miller." She considered for a moment, looking down at their sleeping daughter. "Will we tell him about Sarah? That she's not biologically yours?" "Only if you want to," Xander said. "To me, she is mine in every way that matters. Blood doesn't make a family, Annabelle. Love does." She leaned up to kiss him, her heart full. "When can we meet him?" The answer came sooner than expected. Just a week later, a wagon arrived from town, carrying Adelaide, who had gone to Cheyenne on the pretense of shopping, and a solemn-faced boy with sandy hair and wary brown eyes. "James," Adelaide called as she helped him down from the wagon. "This is my brother Xander and his wife Annabelle. And that little one is their daughter, Sarah." The boy clutched a small bundle of belongings, eyeing them uncertainly. "Madam, sir," he said politely, though his posture remained tense, ready for rejection. Annabelle handed Sarah to Xander and knelt before the boy, bringing herself to his eye level. "We're very glad to meet you, James," she said warmly. "Adelaide has told us what a help you were on the journey from Cheyenne." He straightened a little at the praise. "I took care of the horses at the stops," he said. "My pa taught me about horses before he died." "We have quite a few horses here that need tending," Xander said, shifting Sarah to one arm so he could extend his hand to the boy. "Would you like to see them?" James hesitated only a moment before taking the offered hand. "Yes, sir." "Xander," he corrected gently. "We use first names in this family." The word family made the boy's eyes widen slightly. "Yes, Xander." As the days passed, James gradually relaxed, his natural curiosity and intelligence emerging as he realized he was truly welcome. He shadowed Xander around the ranch, soaking up knowledge about cattle, horses, and the land. In the evenings, Annabelle taught him to read better, building on the basic skills he'd acquired at the orphanage. With Sarah, he was gentle and protective, making her laugh with funny faces and helping Annabelle care for her. One evening, as Annabelle tucked him into bed in what was now firmly his room, he asked the question that had clearly been on his mind. "Are you really going to keep me? Forever?" Her heart ached at the uncertainty in his voice. "Yes, James. Forever. We're going to adopt you properly. You'll be a Blackwood, just like Sarah. He considered this, his young face serious. But Sarah was born a Blackwood. I'm just extra. Sarah wasn't born a Blackwood either, Annabelle said, making a split-second decision to trust him with the truth. Xander isn't her birth father, but he chose to be her father, just like he's choosing to be yours. And that kind of choice made from love is stronger than any blood tie could ever be. James absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful. So we're both chosen? Yes, she confirmed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. Both deeply wanted and chosen. He smiled then, the first full, unguarded smile she'd seen from him. I choose you too, he said simply. You and Xander and Sarah. To be my family. By summer's end, the adoption was official. James Miller became James Blackwood, son of Xavier and Annabelle, brother to Sarah. The celebration that followed brought the entire community together, ranch hands, townspeople, and neighboring ranchers all gathering to welcome the newest Blackwood. As the years passed, the family continued to grow. A son, William, was born the following year, indisputably Xander's with his dark hair and strong features. 2 years later, twins Matthew and Mary joined the family, completing their circle of love. The Rocking X prospered under Xander's management, expanding to become one of the largest and most successful ranches in the territory. James grew into a fine young man with his father's way with horses and his mother's compassionate heart. Sarah, delicate at birth, developed into a strong-willed girl with a talent for art and a fierce protectiveness toward her younger siblings. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Xander took Annabelle for a ride to the spot where he had found her that fateful day, collapsed on the road to his ranch. A small stream now ran nearby, lined with cottonwoods that provided welcome shade in the summer heat. I've been thinking about that day a lot lately, he said as they sat side by side on a blanket, watching the water flow. How different our lives might have been if I hadn't decided to ride into town that afternoon. I like to think we would have found each other somehow, Annabelle replied, leaning against his shoulder. That we were meant to be. He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. You know what I remember most? Not the fear on your face or the pain you were in. I remember thinking, even then, that you were the bravest person I'd ever seen. I didn't feel brave, she admitted. I felt terrified and alone. That's what makes it bravery, he said, turning to face her. Doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Standing tall when everything is falling apart around you. She kissed him then, pouring 10 years of love and gratitude into the gesture. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. I have something for you, Xander said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to her. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a gold locket. When she opened it, she found a tiny portrait of their 5 children on one side and a miniature of Xander on the other. It's beautiful, she breathed, immediately fastening it around her neck. Not as beautiful as you, he said, his voice husky with emotion. Or the life you've given me. As the sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Annabelle looked at her husband, this man who had taken in a desperate, pregnant stranger, and said, That baby already has a father. I love you, Xavier Blackwood, she said softly. More than I could ever express. And I love you, he replied, pulling her close. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. They rode home as twilight settled over the land, returning to the warmth and chaos of their bustling household, to James teaching William to play chess, to the twins chasing each other through the parlor, to Sarah setting the table for dinner with meticulous care, to the life they had built together, founded on courage, compassion, and the enduring power of love freely given. And in the years that followed, whenever anyone in Silverton told the story of the abandoned bride and the rancher who took her in, They always ended it the same way, with the words that had changed everything, spoken by a man brave enough to open his heart after loss, to a woman courageous enough to build a new life from the ashes of her old one. That baby already has a father.